Good morning, YouTube. Today, I want to talk about buying exhausts for Ferraris.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, my name is Dan, this is my garage, and this channel is all about the supercar ownership experience. And today, I want to talk about exhausts on Ferraris because I think there's a lot of misinformation. And furthermore, I think it's one of the most important things about these cars. One of the things that makes people love Ferraris is that sound, that F1 sound. People have associated that sound with Ferraris for a long time. In fact, when you talk to people and they tell you about how they first loved Ferraris, so often the story is, oh, I heard this car and then I saw it and it was beautiful and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's a really important thing. And given that we only have 5 senses, hearing is a pretty important thing. And so to lose that sense really, in my opinion, changes the entire experience of the car and makes it not as good. And the unfortunate reality is most of the modern Ferraris don't sound like traditional Ferraris anymore. And part of that is because the engines have gotten bigger over the years, and then also they start adding turbos, which really change the sound quite a bit. So let's talk about these exhausts, what you can do on the cars, and what exhaust systems or designs make the most sense for the different models, or at least different grouping of models. And before I get going, if you happen to need an exhaust for your Ferrari, go check out my website, normalguysupercar.com. I sell quite a few different systems. They're all excellent, high quality systems, and we're going to be discussing quite a few of them in this video, so go check it out. Use the code NGS10 and it will knock off 10%. And if you find a better deal on exhaust somewhere else, talk to me. Email me, Dan at normalguysupercar.com, and I will beat their price, guaranteed, as long as I can still make money. But, you know, I'll beat their price. All right, exhaust. One of my favorite topics. And actually, I would say when people buy their Ferrari and they ask me about exhaust systems and should I actually change the exhaust and does it really make that big a difference, the thing I always tell them is absolutely modifying the exhaust on these cars is probably the single best thing you can do to make your experience of owning the car so much better. And I'll tell you right now, it changes the entire feeling of the car. It makes it feel like a proper Ferrari. I can remember when Richard bought his Ferrari and he liked the sound, he thought it was good, and then he kept thinking about changing it, and then when we did finally put in that Klein in his 458, he was like, oh my lord, this changes the whole thing. It makes it so much more enjoyable, and you can see the smile on his face. I mean, look at this clip. Yeah, he's just smiling and laughing and giggling like a schoolgirl. It was awesome. So here's where it gets a little bit fascinating. You have to kind of break up the Ferraris into different categories to understand what exhausts make the most sense. But before we do that, let's just talk quickly about the exhaust materials, because there's kind of 3 main materials that we're using in exhausts in current exhaust systems. First one is obviously stainless steel. I mean, to me, that is the minimum you want. Stainless steel, probably at least 304 grade, which is a good stainless steel. It's durable, it's not light, but it works really well. And that's like the default. Nothing wrong with it, absolutely makes a great exhaust. Now, the 2 that are kind of more unique and much more expensive are titanium and Inconel. So titanium kind of made its way into the exhaust world a while ago, and it creates weird tinniness in the sound of the exhaust, which people seem to love. But there's a few good things and bad things about titanium. The best thing about it is super, super light. I mean, ridiculously light. Way, way lighter than stainless steel. It's also very durable. It's a very hard, or I should say it's a very hard material. Here's the problem, is that titanium seems to have a bit of a problem with being heat cycled a lot. When it gets heat cycled a lot, it starts to get a little bit brittle, and occasionally you start to get some cracks, and sometimes the welds will break. Now, that's not super common, so I don't think it's something to really get worried about, but it arguably isn't the most ideal material for a street exhaust. It's really good for race cars. It's kind of race car parts sort of thing because of the lightness, and they don't really care if it doesn't last that long because the car is not going to be around that long. It's going to get thrown out. So the last material is Inconel 625, I think they call it. Again, super light, has a bit of tinniness, although it's a bit different than the sound out of titanium. But the thing about Inconel is it seems to not really give a crap about heat cycling. It does not harm it at all. So I would say of the materials, Inconel is my favorite. It's also the most expensive. So that is why I would say if you have the money for Inconel, great. If you don't, and that's fine too. Any of those materials are going to be fine. They just have their different positives and negatives. Ultimately, it's going to be up to you which one you want. All right, so now we got the materials out of the way. Let's talk about the V8 Ferraris first, because the V12s are a bit different. So the V8s, starting with the 348s and 355s, kind of had the small displacement V8s. You only had 3.4 3.4 liter, 3.5 liter, and even arguably the 360 was a 3.6 liter. But the sound is different on all three of them, quite substantially different. And part of that is the 355 was 5 valves per cylinder versus the 348 was only 4 valves per cylinder. And then the 360 was also 5 valves per cylinder, but it was a bigger displacement engine, kind of a different design. So the 360 kind of has the more modern sound to it where it's a bit more baritone. So one of the things is the bigger displacement engine you get, the more baritone the sound of the exhaust. And I don't know if that's just because of the piston size or whatever, I don't know the physics behind it. That seems to be true for the V8 Ferraris. Now on the older Ferraris, there is something about the Capristo on the 355, which I will say is probably one of the best sounding car combination exhaust notes in the world. It is hard to beat that car with the Capristo. The 355 Capristo is glorious. To me, it is the ultimate in sound for a Ferrari other than F1 cars. It's as good as you can get out of a street car, and I almost say there's not really any other choice. So if you have a 355, there's really almost no other option than a Capristo, in my opinion. That's what you should do. The 348, the big thing you need to do on a 348 is you need an X-pipe, and that's actually going to be the consistent theme for all of these cars is you want an X-pipe. And the reason is the X-pipe increases the exhaust gas flow. It kind of combines those pulse waves coming out of the cylinders, and that makes the engine get a higher pitch out of the exhaust, so that's what you want. So there's also a lot of people that have said the 4 2-in-1 design headers produce a different sound than the 4-in-1 headers. And I think there's some truth to that, but I don't know that it makes as big a difference. Part of it is also that the 4-2-1s are substantially more complex and much more expensive. So is it worth the extra money? It's debatable. I would say if you have the money, it probably is going to produce a yet even higher pitch than it will on the 4-in-1s. So the 355 by factory has the 4-2-1 design, which is something that was a little bit more unique for most of the Ferraris. Most of them do not have that design. So when you get to 360s and later, 360, F430 especially, and the 458, all three of those cars, you really need to have an X-pipe. And the thing is, when you add the X-pipe, it does increase the pitch and give it that F1 sound. So your options start to become very broad. There are lots of good exhaust designs. Fabspeed, Capristo, S-Line, Klein, Top Speed. Basically, all of the major companies have X-pipe design, and there's a reason why almost all of them have an X-pipe design, because that is the thing that makes the car sound so glorious. Now here's the catch. When I did this car and I put on the X-pipe from S-Line, it sounded good, but it wasn't great. It needed a little more. And as soon as I pulled out the cats, that's when the sound really started to scream. And that's because the exhaust velocity slows down tremendously in the catalytic converters. Versus when you have no cats, the exhaust just shoots right through, really gets high speed exhaust, and you get that high pitched scream or screech or, I don't know, wail? I don't know what the right term is. The F1 awesomeness. We'll just go with that. That is the biggest, best combination, I would say, on the 458. No cats, S-line, or some sort of X-pipe exhaust. Do the headers make a big difference? Yes, but I would say they're not critical on the 458. On the 430s and 360s, the header change is a big deal because the headers from the factory have pre-cats in them. So even if you pull out the cats, you still have pre-cats. So it still doesn't quite change the exhaust. To really do the 430 and 360 right, you need to do aftermarket cat. You need to replace the whole exhaust. Which on the 430 and the 360, they both had header cracking issues, so you might as well. Those factory headers are garbage. They're gonna break. Get rid of them. Just compute that into the cost of the car. You're gonna have to do a whole exhaust. Obviously, this brings up problems if you live in emissions controlled states or counties or whatever. You're on your own on that one. This is for not street use only. Disclaimer, right? All the things I'm telling you are for race cars only. So don't do it. Now we got that out of the way. Now we get to the ultra modern F8 and 488, the turbo V8s. There's only two things you can really change those, because you can't really change out the headers, because it goes headers directly into the turbos. Like, it's a header manifold straight into the turbo. It's, you know, only like that long, so turbos are sitting right there. So there's no changing out that. But after the turbos, you can change out the cats to down pipes, you know, straight through pipes. And again, you can put an X pipe into these 488s and F8s. And most people, their biggest hang up with the turbo cars is the sound. But if you change out that exhaust, you put in cat deletes and you put in an X pipe, they sound amazing. And it's actually really cool because it starts to get that Ferrari scream. Then you add in the sound of the turbos, which is kind of cool. I actually really like it. You know, most people are gonna tell you, is it as good as like the 458 Scream? No, but it's really good. It's a really good sound, and it makes the car sound like a proper Ferrari. That's my advice if you happen to have one of those cars. Cat deletes and get an X pipe of some sort. There's quite a few options on those. That makes it sound really good. Okay, so we have all these different exhaust systems, and what happens when you don't want to be loud and obnoxious? Well, that's where the valve systems come into play. So there's quite a few options again on these valve systems. Effectively, what you've got is the valves will open and close based on whether you want the car loud or quiet. The factory computer controls the valves that come on the factory exhaust. You can continue to use the factory controller, or you can get aftermarket controllers such as the Forza Componente, which have a remote control, and you literally push buttons for loud, quiet, or resume factory operation, which is pretty awesome. So far, I have to say the Forza, in my opinion, is the best by far. So if you're buying a valved kit and it doesn't come with the controller, just buy the Forza. It's the best. So what happens is when the valves close, it diverts the exhaust to go through usually a muffler system of some sort. And actually, some of them don't even have a muffler. They just have the pipes go to really narrow, like super small. Factory exhaust has 3 exits, and it's got 2 when the valves are open, and when the valves close, the 2 pipes actually come together and go out the single exit in the center, but they're tiny. I mean, you're like talking like that big of a space. So you got a 4.5 liter engine revving to 9,000 going through a hole that big. Yeah, it's gonna like cause it to have tons of back pressure, lose horsepower, but be really quiet. And so that's what they're trying to do. So effectively, the valve systems, when closed, generally, depends on the valve system, sometimes it's reversed, but generally when closed, causes this system to sound quieter by diverting the exhaust through mufflers or through thinner exhaust pipes. The only thing I'll say about valve systems is do not ever use electric valves based on my previous experience with electric valves. So far, none of the exhaust systems I'm aware of for these cars have electric systems, so don't worry about that. That's not a problem. Okay, so what about the V12 cars? Well, the V12 cars kind of have the same problem, really. You need that X pipe. And it's a little bit different because the front engine V12 cars have a very long exhaust. And so you get a different tone out of those exhausts. But if you look from the factory, you've got the headers coming down, and then you've got the catalytic converters, and then it just goes back in 2 separate pipes all the way out the back of the car through mufflers. And then they have valve systems back in the back of the mufflers. So somewhere along the way, after the catalytic converters, you can take that pipe and replace it with the next pipe, and it'll increase the pitch and give it some good sound. Pulling out the cats, obviously it's gonna make it a lot louder and hopefully increase the pitch if you have the X pipe. Without the X pipe, it's gonna make it sound kind of bad. If you saw my videos of my 599, once I didn't even pull the cats, I put in sport cats, which then again increased the flow tremendously. It did not sound good because it doesn't have an X pipe yet. So effectively that exhaust was just straight pipes, and it's too much. Too much. So the other thing that's interesting about the V12s is how the headers are designed. So you've got 6 cylinders on each side out of the V12. Does it go into 6 into 1, or does it go 6 into 2 sets of 3 and then into 1? The system I have is 6, 3, 1, and they do make some 6 into 1, which it's pretty difficult to do those. There's not that much space, and so it's kind of cramming in there, and those headers are very expensive. You can get them, but ultimately the biggest thing is, again, it's gonna be the consistent theme of this whole video. X-pipe. You need an X-pipe. X-pipes are the crucial element of all these cars. Now we've talked about that, what about some of the various different exhaust systems that are on the market, the different brands? Again, all the brands I have on my website, normalguysupercar.com, I think are actually very high quality. You're gonna be happy with pretty much any of them. And they have different pluses and minuses. Unfortunately, for me to go through all the different brands and tell you all the different details about them would take me a long time, so I'm not going to. But if you have any specific questions about a brand, about why I should choose this brand or the other brand, if you're looking at getting an exhaust, well, email me, Dan@normalguysupercar.com, and we can have that conversation. In the meantime, I'm going to be having my Ferrari 458 exhaust shootout come out very soon, so you're gonna wanna stay tuned for all of that. So you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. When you do watch and give me a thumbs up, that does help out my video, so thank you tremendously to all of you that are doing that. But we're gonna have a lot more car stuff coming your way, lots more Ferrari stuff, so stay tuned. It's gonna be sweet.